Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fairmede Hilltop Neighborhood Council meeting. My name is Arlo Rentila. Our July 2022 meeting. I'm glad to see our beat officer is here. And so before we get started, I wanted to mention that for those of you that haven't seen the city council meeting or didn't watch it the other night, they were unable to find it in themselves to give RPD some extra money to hire more officers. So unfortunately, we're going to be short for a while. And if you're happy with that, contact your city council and applaud them. And if you're not, contact them anyway. So as I said, tonight we have our Prologis, the new owners of Hilltop Mall. We also have Lena Velasco from the city to talk about the Hilltop Horizon project. So I guess we'll invite the beat officer here to start first, if you don't mind.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to give you the stats for the Fairmede district for the last month.
Can you raise the mic a little?
Absolutely. So we had 5 thefts. We had 4 5150s. We had 4 vehicle thefts. We had 2 auto burglaries, 2 domestic violence. We had 2 shootings, 1 lost property. We had 1 attempted homicide. We had a vandalism. And we had another domestic battery, and we had a drunk driver. And those were the stats for the month. Do anyone here have any questions or concerns or anything that I need to address?
I do. I was just curious, can you tell the audience how many hours you're working a week? Are you working mandatory overtime? Or?
Yes. Well, for this week, it's only about 35 for the week. And 2 mandatories, and then we have forces too, because unforeseen things, but the staffing is an issue right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. Yeah.
Good evening. How are you?
Was that just for those statistics for Fairmede or just for PK exclusive?
That was just for Fairmede. Any other concerns or anything that you guys have within your areas, homes, or anything that we can address or look into? Yes.
Comparatively, what was it like last year and then the year before with the pandemic, and then prior, maybe, I don't know if you have any statistics to show sort of historically
For
the crimes that you've mentioned? Sorry. Are the crimes up, down? Did we see a decline with COVID? Did we upcline?
so property property crime is higher. Homicides, I'm not really sure where we're at right now, so I can't really speak on that. I can probably bring stats though for next time if you guys want me to.
Yes,
We can do a comparable from a year ago.
Now, maybe better before a year ago, because I think with COVID, everybody's habits changed a little bit. So maybe prior to, just to...
It's kind of hard, I mean, for me, because, you know, we hear every day, and so you deal with it, so the stats will tell a little bit more. But for me, it feels like it's increased a lot, just with the basic crimes. I mean, I know homicides, because, you know, what happens is when you have, if you just tally up the homicides, you don't really get a telltale what's really going on, because we have shootings every night, and people get shot, but they don't die. So it really doesn't give you a telltale of what's really going on if you just say, hey, we have 12 homicides. You get what I'm saying? So sometimes those stats doesn't really tell what's really going on in the city.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, this gentleman behind me has had a dark gray Honda parked in front of his house for over a month. And he's called it in several times, called in the abandoned hotline, and there's still no response. So
What's the address?
30, right there, 3059.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
3079 Shane Drive.
Got it. I will go take a look at it.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Any other concerns that anyone want to address or anything? No? All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have a good one, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, and stay safe out there.
Will do. Thank you.
Well, I see Lena from the city's in here, and so did you want to go before Prologis, or does it matter? Do you guys want to flip a
I
coin?
think it makes sense for Lena. Okay, I'm happy to go.
Okay, we have Lena Velasco from the city of Richmond here to talk about the Hilltop Horizon Plan.
Do you have the,
We do, Pastor Warren has the PowerPoint.
oh, okay, great, thank you.
Hold on one second. Sorry, I was set up for Prologis to go first.
No worries. Good thing I'm short and you can see it over my head, right? Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Lena Velasco. I'm the Director of Community Development with the City of Richmond, and I'm proud to have served you all for the last 17 years in different capacities, so it's great to be here. And I apologize for my tardiness. I had a meeting that ended at 7, so luckily there was no traffic. So I am just going to give you all a quick update on where we are, and for some of you it may be an introduction to the Hilltop Horizon specific plan. And this is going to be a specific plan that the city is initiating in acknowledgement that the Hilltop area has been designated a priority development area where we want to direct growth for the city, but also the region. And that growth will look different in terms of land uses. It may be job growth. It could also be housing growth, as well as revenues for the city. So are you going to be able to advance the slides, Pastor Lloyd?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start by giving you a little bit of background. So we'll move to the next slide, please. So the idea is we're going to be developing a specific plan, and the specific plan is really a specific zoning for an area. And the things that we look at are land use, circulation, infrastructure, design elements, and then neighborhood serving uses as well. And so as part of this process, we're hoping to transform this area into a more active regional destination, but also local serving destination. It will also create a development framework that will be shovel ready, and what that means is we will do all the environmental review that's needed to enable that type of redevelopment, and we'll consider costs and different development scenarios within that process. The ultimate mix of uses and the development program is going to come from the community input process, as well as stakeholders, property owners, business owners. And so it's very important for everybody to participate in that process so that your perspectives can be reflected. And certainly there's going to be a balancing of desires throughout this process, and so we're going to do our best to integrate as much of the input within this plan. Next slide, please. So within the general plan, when we adopted this in 2012, there was a pretty significant 5-year community engagement process, many of you which probably participated, but did identify as this hilltop area as an activity center. And at the time, the community envisioned an area that was pedestrian and transit friendly, an area that would support mixed use as well as higher density development, more than what was on the site at the time. It would also generate revenues and create jobs for the Richmond community as well as the region. But it would also provide services and amenities for the neighborhood surrounding the site as well as other parts of Richmond. So we're hoping that through the specific plan, we'll be able to continue to achieve those goals. Next slide. So here's an example of what the general plan envisioned, and this is within the general plan. There was a hilltop change area, and so these were areas that were anticipated to change between 2012 and 2030, which is the horizon period for the Hilltop area. So here's an example of the shopping center over on Bloom Drive, adjacent to I-80 and Hilltop Road. And so as you can see, it was to sort of convert these auto-oriented parking lots into higher density mixed-use development that could include housing, but also a retail center, as well as office uses at a higher scale than what's there today. Next slide, please. So in 2020, the Association of Bay Area Governments did what was a call for nominations for cities throughout the Bay Area region where we could designate or nominate areas to become priority development areas. And so the Richmond City Council nominated the Hilltop PDA in February of 2020, and the designation was approved by the Association of Bay Area Governments in February 14th of 2020. And this is really important because one part of the funding we got for this plan is being supported by the Association of Bay Area Governments, so it made us eligible for additional funding. But the region is also focusing grant funds related to transportation improvement, circulation, and development to priority development areas. So this was a very important designation for the Hilltop area. Next slide, please. So here on this map, you will see what will be our focus areas. So we are focusing at the Hilltop Mall, but also the surrounding parcels. Along with the parcels around Galleria. As you know, there's several vacant lots there, as well as the old Chevy site. So we do want to consider development there. Now, I will say that throughout the process, there may be improvements that go beyond the focus area. So for example, I know there's been concerns raised about the lack of lighting on Hilltop Road. So this will give us an opportunity to look at circulation. I think if you look at Hilltop Road as well, there may be sidewalks on one side of the street, but not on the other. So it also gives us an opportunity to look at both the pedestrian circulation, bike circulation, auto circulation, and transit throughout the area. So while this is our area of focus for the land uses, we will look at improvements and enhancements that go beyond these boundaries. And certainly look at towards your input and making sure that we're focusing on the right areas. Next slide. So one of the key opportunities for the specific plan is obviously the redevelopment of the former Hilltop Mall. And so it can serve as a catalyst for redevelopment for the entire specific plan area. As we know, malls, enclosed malls, a lot of them have switched over to different uses over time. And they were also built at a time where things were single use and more auto-oriented. And so now that there's been more competition from online retailers, we know that brick and mortar retailers are really harder to support. And so looking at a mix of uses to better enhance the redevelopment opportunities. So we're acknowledging that this obviously is one of the catalyst sites within the specific plan areas. There's a new property owner. And so we're hoping that through this process, we'll be able to guide the future redevelopment of that site with your input. So here's, next slide, please. So the next slide really shows kind of one of, this is an example, so this is South Bay Galleria and Redondo Beach. This was a former mall site that has now switched to mixed use. So in this case, they have a mix of retail offices, but as you can also see, there's community gathering spaces. And so we want to make sure that throughout the plan, we're also looking at opportunities to meet unmet community needs, such as enhanced open space. I've heard a lot, through different processes, being able to bring a farmer's market or other outdoor activities and entertainment to this community is important, as the mall used to provide at one time. So we want to continue to look for those types of opportunities. Next slide. And then the other great thing about your neighborhood, as you all know, it's in a prime Bay Area location. There's great accessibility not only to Interstate 80, but also to Interstate 580 from the Richmond Parkway. The area is served by 2 transit agencies, both to the north and south, so AC Transit as well as WestCat. And then we also know that there's good infrastructure here where there's plenty, water is connected, there's sewer. So those are all the things, as well as very wide roads, that gives us an opportunity to enhance and bring other circulation opportunities. As well as it's 146 acres in the middle of, an urban area of Richmond, so there's good redevelopment opportunity. Next slide. So in terms of the planning process, so right now we're in the existing conditions as well as looking at some of the opportunities and constraints based on those background studies. We will be doing the associated environmental document. Like I said, our goal is to streamline redevelopment so that when we do get a project in the future, it already has environmental clearance and we're not having to take another 6 to 12 months to approve those types of projects. So we're undergoing existing conditions, and I'll talk a little bit more about what those reports are, and then we'll be presenting opportunities and constraints, and then the next big item is the scenario planning, the visioning process. And so that will be the first community meeting working with you all to understand what are some goals that you would like to see, what are some uses, and then talk about the different land use scenarios that could achieve that. From that scenario planning, the City Council will select what's known as a preferred plan. And that preferred plan will then guide the consultant team in developing the specific plan framework. So we'll look at what are the development standards, what are the design standards, what is the circulation components. So all of that will go into the process, and then once the plan is developed, we'll be doing any technical analysis that's needed to conform with the California Environmental Quality Act. And you'll be able to, as community members and participants in the process, will be able to review draft documents and provide your input to make sure that the document reflects the input received. We are looking at an 18 to 24-month schedule, which has already started. We would like to accelerate as much as possible, but I think a lot of that will be dependent on the input process and how much participation we get. And then I'll talk a little bit about the comprehensive consultant team that we've been able to assemble. So next slide. So this is the consultant team that the city has selected to help lead this process. So ESA, Environmental Science Associates, is the prime. Under them, they have several sub-consultants. A3GEO is doing the geotechnical analyses. Site Lab is doing the urban design work. Fair Peers is doing the traffic and transportation analysis. CHS will be doing a parking study to make sure that all of the land uses have sufficient parking, as well as looking at other transit enhancement mobility options. BAE will be supporting the project by making sure we're doing market studies to understand what is the demand in the market for different land uses. As I mentioned, retail has significantly been challenged, with the online retailers, and then with the COVID-19 pandemic have been further challenged. And so we want to make sure that what we envision together as a community is something that's realistic and doable, because what we don't want to come up is with a plan that sits on a shelf. And then Davis and Associates will be supporting the engagement process and is also hosting the website. And then NCE will be doing the civil engineering and looking at infrastructure, both dry and wet utilities. Next slide. So we're really excited that we were able to get a lot of grants to make sure that the process is community driven and that your input matters and is taken into account when developing this process. So We'll be attending neighborhood council meetings. We will be forming an advisory committee meeting group that will be made up of both property owners, business owners, neighborhood council representatives, transit agencies, to bring everybody to the table to really have discussions about options and opportunities. We'll be having community workshops that will engage the broader Richmond community. We'll be doing study sessions with the Planning Commission where the public will have opportunities to provide input, as well as at the City Council level. And then we've already started the stakeholder interview process. But we've done online surveys, and we'll be looking for other opportunities for input. So these are just a few. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we were able to get this all grant funded, the work. So we received 2 grants. The first grant is a local early action planning grant, and this is provided by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And we received this in 2020. We were able to leverage that LEAP grant with a priority development area planning grant, and that is $750,000 that was provided to us through the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. All those grants have a common objective of accelerating housing production, so again, streamlining both CEQA review as well as development standards, and then also creating jobs near transit. Next slide. Sorry. So the project schedule. As I mentioned, we're just completing right now the data collection and the existing conditions analyses. And so what we are going to be doing now is forming the project advisory group and then scheduling our first community workshop. And throughout the process, we'll be doing public outreach and engagement. I've already let Ardo know that we're happy to attend your meetings regularly to just provide you updates on where we are in the process, as well as other neighborhood councils in this area and throughout the city. So the next part will be the scenario planning. This is really where we start asking you, what is your goals? What would you like to see? And then we will develop different land use options to present to the Planning Commission and the City Council. So our goal is to get this wrapped up by Q4 2023. And there are some statutory deadlines. So, for example, environmental documents, they have to be released for public comment, and so we want to provide those opportunities, and that sometimes drives the schedule. So next slide. So this is the current data collection we're doing, is we're looking at different urban design opportunities within the specific plan. Obviously, the topography of Hilltop is an important consideration. As you know, the mall site, for example, but even Hilltop Drive is on a different plane than some of the streets, and so we need to consider all of that in urban design. And we're looking at what are the current land uses, looking at the market studies, what does the market demand for, what's it looking to create. We're looking at the capacity of the existing utilities, so do we have enough electrical power, do we have enough sewer, or do we need to consider all of that within the development program. In addition, transportation circulation, so looking at the way the roads function, do we have enough traffic signals, is there enough lighting, do we have different mobility options, and like I said, we're doing the market study, the geotechnical studies too, if these are going to be taller buildings, what type of soils conditions are there within the area. And then all of that analysis is it's helping us form what are the opportunities and constraints that we see as a consultant team, and then we'll be getting reactions from you all as community members. Did we get everything, or are there other opportunities or constraints that we haven't considered? Next slide, please. So we recently held our stakeholder interviews, and we had 2 sessions, one in June and the other recently in July. And so we've already interviewed representatives of property and business owners, transit agencies, neighborhood council representatives, the WIGTAC, the Council of Business and Industries, representatives from them, the county public health department, as well as we've also interviewed some council members and some planning commissioners to understand goals and opportunities as well. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, the next immediate steps are we're going to be forming this technical advisory committee, and then they will meet in August, likely towards the end of August, and then we're hoping to schedule our community workshop in September or October. And just out of curiosity, who would prefer to do it via Zoom or in person? This is always a question that we struggle with, because some people want to participate via Zoom, others would prefer to be in person. So is there a preference? If you could raise your hand if you prefer it to be Zoom. Okay, a lot of you want it in person. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so we will look to plan towards that, and I think it's important to have spaces like this near the area we're planning, and so we definitely appreciate the Hilltop Community Church hosting us tonight, but also for future meetings, either, looking at the mall site potentially, or this church. I think it's important that it be accessible from the area that we're planning around. And then just recommend you all visit the website. There is an option to sign up for notifications when materials get posted on the website, as well as announcements for community meetings. So we definitely encourage you to sign up. We promise not to fill your inbox with a lot of spam emails, but if you definitely want to stay in touch and be informed, it will be a good opportunity, and we encourage you to sign up. In addition, if you have any questions about the process or just want to provide input, you can also email us. We did create a project-specific email so we can track all of that input. And so both of those are listed here. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions or get comments.
I promised often I would ask you, where are we at with the sign next to the freeway? I'm just doing
Well, Public Works has gotten the contract for the demolition approved, and I think they're just working with the contractor to schedule the date. There is coordination that has to happen with the property owners since it's an easement, but I think Greg Hardesty was going to follow up with a consultant named Wilson who's helping us with that process, but it's hopefully in August.
Could Art repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So Ardo asked if I can give an update on the removal of the Hilltop monument sign that's along Interstate 80. So it is planned to be demolished. The city is preserving its easement, so as part of the specific plan, we'll be looking at opportunities to add a new sign in the future. But nothing will happen immediately. It will be part of this planning process.
Piggybacking off that, who's paying for the demolition? Who's paying for that removal of the sign?
I believe it's being funded through iHeart Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah. And iHeart Richmond is kind of doing cleanup activities and beautification projects. Sir?
Will this updated presentation be put onto the Hilltop Horizon website?
I'm happy to put it on the website or also provide it to Ardo to share with you all.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
What is the focus beyond the mall?
So it's the areas adjacent. So what we're not including is Summer Lane, so that area won't be replanned. But we are including like the old or the Enterprise site, the former AAA site, where some of the newer schools have built, and then Garrity Way. So starting on Bloom up to the Garrity Way Circle where the Tides Apartments are. So it's a total of 143 acres. There is a map, but
right there.
oh, there it is. Thank you. So it'll go from the old Mechanics Bank site all the way down towards Garrity Way and then sort of the southern parcels. There are some vacant or kind of shopping center sites that there's some opportunity.
How about the YMCA over there?
We're not going that far out towards the lakeside.
Okay.
So this is kind of a key area of focus for now, but if there's opportunities, we'll look for some there in the future. Ma'am, I think, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna ask what buildings you were gonna demolish.
Oh, at this point, we're not proposing to demolish any buildings. We will look at redevelopment potential for sites. And some, obviously there's considerations that you have to make when looking. We wouldn't demolish any as the city, but as part of the interview process and the interviewing, we may say, I don't know, maybe the cost of the old enterprise where they do auto rentals, that's a very small building, but in the future, could it have a multi-story building that has either office or retail or something else? So we'll look at redevelopment potential, but won't necessarily be demolishing any buildings. That would be at the property owner's discretion.
No, I was just curious if there's a finish date. What is your timeline?
So our goal is to have a fully adopted specific plan with environmental clearance by the end of 2023. Now there's potential to accelerate that if we find there's a lot of commonalities and the input that we're receiving and we're able to get buy-in on the preferred land use plan. Now if there's a lot of disagreement, then that may take a longer process to work through that. So right now, I think we're estimating the end of 2023, but we will look for opportunities to accelerate if we're able to reach agreements on that.
And do you foresee any zoning changes for this project?
Well, the entire specific plan will be a zoning change. So the specific plan, we will likely do a general plan amendment designating what we will call the Hilltop Horizon specific plan area, and then that will update the zoning to refer back to this document. So it will likely be a general plan amendment and a rezone.
Why are we not looking at closed way? So if you look at the map, right now where across the street from the movie theaters on closed way, there was a proposed development there. It's going to be another small mixed-use project. I don't think it's moving forward. But that parking lot there, they were looking to do something, that owner that was there. And then we've got all that parking space up there where, which is pretty much on the top corner there where closed way is. I think that we should be looking at that area. And right next to the Mechanics Bank, the new Mechanics Bank, that parking lot there, it's split into two. And the owner is looking to do something with that other portion. Nobody's put the money down for it, but there's opportunities there to develop and to really connect everything together. And then the property owner of the shopping center up there also owns that green space, that hole. Right? So they are interested, and they've been interested before, to get rid of that, to do something with it. So the city might be able to develop it back into a park, or being able to do something with it. So I think we should be looking at all that area as a whole, because that's going to be a big opportunity. You have the freeway right there, and if we look at it as connecting, you've got two freeway entrances that are going to be coming into the Hilltop Mall. All of that should be looked at together. It's going to affect what happens with this project, whatever happens on the freeway entrance over there. So, thank you.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we can look into. I mean, I think a lot of it is just cost and pricing, right? So to focus on one area allows us to get really detailed. The challenge with making the area so big is you kind of have to stay higher level, plus the auto mall area brings in a lot of revenue to the city, so we weren't seeing that transition quickly. But there may be some lower hanging fruit, as you were suggesting, maybe around the Mechanics Bank site and the movie theater that we could potentially look at a little bit more closely. I think the area with the ravine is challenging. challenging because a lot of times these areas had creeks running through them, so then it creates an environmental impact that we don't necessarily can't mitigate. So, but those are things that we'll look at as an opportunity or constraint. Maybe it could be created for park use, but I think the elevation and its use sort of a drainage channel. But we will look, I'll go back with our team and look at that a little bit more closely. So I appreciate you raising those points.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm just curious. You know that area, I've always noticed when I drive by now, there's tons of those Amazon vans there. They don't have a warehouse in there, they just leave their two cars there. Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that they're just parking in the parking lot. Yeah. Sir?
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you guys planned for the possibility that the dealerships may leave due to new tax increases? And so that could potentially be vacant. Not that I really want it to be that way, but...
Yeah, we haven't looked at that as part of this project. I mean, again, we've been planning for this effort, back in 2020 before Measure U, and so I think, we've obviously want to get the work underway, and so we're focusing on our focus area, but if there's opportunities to consider other things, we will throughout the process. Any more questions?
Well, one more.
Yes. So am I to understand that the ESA is driving this specific plan?
ESA is our prime consultant. So the process or the project is being led by city staff through the planning department. Roberta Feliciano, who's one of our senior planners, is leading the work, and as well as I will be supporting it. So we're both spokespersons for the project. But this is a city planned project or proposal. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just was curious as to how they became the spearhead for all of it. So I'm assuming this.
Yeah, the city hired them through a competitive bidding process. We looked at different proposals and cost, and they came in with the most comprehensive team that could achieve our vision. Now, their work is going to be driven by the input from the community, so it's going to be very important for you to share your perspectives throughout the process. If not, the plan will be driven by the consultant teams, and so our goal is to have it reflect your goals.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, and I'll stick around in case people have more questions.
Thank you, Lena. I want to say that, as Lena mentioned, there may be a zoning change, and in order to change the zoning, they're going to have to go in front of the city council. And so this is election season, and I think everybody here should be aware of who's running and what their platform is. And so I see that we have a few candidates in the audience, so I'd like to say that we have Cesar Cepeda here, who's running in District 2. We've got Damon Purcell, who's running in District 4. We've got Corky Bouzet, who's running in District 3. And Mr. Nat Bates, who's running for mayor. So I encourage everybody to get to know what these candidates, what their platform is and what they're running on, because it's important that we elect the right people. So that being said, I'd like to invite Prologis up here, the major stakeholder in this Hilltop Horizon project. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arto, for having us here, and hello, everyone. I'm Samida Chakral. I am an investment officer with Prologis. I think I've spoken in front of some of you, and I think when we presented last year. And this is my colleague, Banke Abioye. Both of us spend a lot of our time working on this Hilltop Mall project. So we thought it would be a great opportunity, and Arto asked us to come here to just come and talk to you, tell you a little bit about our thinking on what we should be doing with the site. So we have a presentation to share. And thanks, Lena, for the really good presentation, very informative. Okay, so, all right, let's go to the next slide. We can keep going with the next. This is just what we're going to talk about. We'll give you a little overview of what we've been doing, and we have been talking to members of the community. We've gathered some feedback through meetings such as these, and then just how that's defined our thinking about the project. So we always like to start just by framing how we think about these projects. So Prologis has developments all around the world, and when we start out, we always think of these 4 pillars of success. We have these 4 shared goals with the stakeholders of the project, and I'll start talking about them from the right side. So our first goal is design excellence. We want to design our buildings and properties in a way that are excellent in design. In a mixed-use neighborhood, we want to make sure we're thinking about placemaking and creating community spaces, just somewhere people love to live, work, shop. So we're always, that's our commitment that we're committed to doing that. And the second goal is achieving the right social goals, right? We think about all the stakeholders as our partners, right? That's why we're here. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to answer your questions, and we want your thinking to be part of how this whole project gets shaped. And when we're thinking about what Hilltop Mall's future should be, we want it to be very people-oriented, thinking about health and wellness, given that we're just coming out of a pandemic. So those are some of the things we like to keep in mind as we think about the future of Hilltop. And then the third goal, which is very much part of how Prologis thinks, is environmental. The way we design our buildings, the way we operate them. We have a goal that we've set for 2040 where we've said we'll be carbon neutral by 2040. So we're doing everything we can to reduce carbon emissions. In all our projects, in most of our projects, we have solar installations. Prologis has the 3rd largest solar installation in the US. We like to invest in on-site power generation, and for a site like Hilltop, we're really thinking about how we can be well connected to public transit so that people are thinking more about walking and biking rather than driving. And then last but not the least, Lena made a comment about we want to create a plan here that doesn't just sit on a shelf and actually gets built. So every idea, every thought, every piece of feedback we get, we put it into our thinking for the project, and we want to make sure that it can be incorporated in a way that's financially feasible so that we can actually bring about this change and build something new at that site, right? Because we know there was someone here before us who had plans, and now they're gone and there hasn't been any change there. So we want to make sure we can actually execute the changes that we're talking about with you. So next slide, please. So, and the next slide, please. This is what the mall looks like today, and we probably didn't need to show you this because you can drive by anytime. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's a lot of parking. The mall is mostly shut down, and Walmart and 24-hour Fitness are the only operating tenants. And in the previous meetings that we've had and the interactions with the community, we received feedback and complaints that there's a safety issue there because it tends to be, there aren't as many eyes on the street. People have talked about how, a lot of people are driving very fast around Hilltop Mall Road. There have been sideshows reported, and a lack of amenities. A lot of the neighbors have said, when I want a cup of coffee or I want to take my kids to a class, I have to drive to a neighboring city instead of being able to do it right here in my neighborhood. So those are some of the themes that we've heard from you. And we could go to the next slide. So I talked a little bit about what we had heard, and I'm going to hand the mic to Banke, who's going to talk more in detail about the feedback that we've collected from the community so far.
Thank you, Samira. So in addition to doing, coming and meeting with the community through neighborhood council meetings, we've also huge effort to connect with the community and hear what it is that you all want to see here at the Hilltop Mall. As you probably have noticed, we've been doing a lot of direct mailers. I believe another one will be hitting your homes next week. Just again to inform you about our process, what we're doing, but also primarily just to hear from you what it is that you want to see. So if we look here, we've heard very strongly that the community wants to see the Hilltop redevelopment include walkable open space. There's a strong desire to see a grocery store there. Strong desire to see, some kind of entertainment aspects, including restaurants and retail, as well as housing. So, and to date, we've collected over 1,200 responses, and still counting, which it's been really exciting to see how engaged and how enthusiastic the community is, and to see and hear what it is that they want to see at the site. So this feedback definitely is helping to shape and guide our concept planning and thinking as we walk into the next stage of our process. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Smita.
Thank you, Banke. So, shaped on everything we've heard from you so far and our study of the site and the things that we've heard Lena talk about in the aspirations for the specific plan, we've created a vision for the site. So we want, the way we think about it is that we want to transform this neighborhood with you, together with you. And we want to create something.
I think maybe, I'm guessing, maybe hold it up more in the middle rather than the bottom.
All right, is this good?
Yeah.
So our vision is we want, I talk to so many people in Richmond and they tell me about, I used to go to Hilltop to buy all my Christmas gifts, and I used to go to Hilltop to do this and do that. And we really want it to be that same attraction and gathering space for the community again. And we want it to be a place that you're proud of, right? I mean, it's just a dead mall right now. So those are some of the guiding themes we're using. And what does it take for a space to be all of that to a community, right? You want to see some amenities, you want to see some restaurants, you want to see open spaces and parks where kids can play, maybe some seasonal programming, a farmer's market. So we want all those elements to be there so that you can get, the community can gather and enjoy a seasonal performance or an art display. We want there to be new housing. We know that's a big priority for the specific plan. And we also want there to be commercial uses that can generate jobs and taxes and also help create financial feasibility for this project. So that's the vision that we've created, and obviously it takes a lot to go from a vision to a plan that we can execute. So we're in the process, just like Lena showed you, she has this big consultant team. We've also engaged some consultants, and we're studying all the different challenges of the site, right? And one of them is how different the grades of the site are. We'll also most likely need to demolish the existing mall to be able to plan and fit in all the things that I just mentioned and everything we've heard the community talk about, and create a new street network. There'll be many new utilities required, so it's a big investment for Prologis in time and effort and the team that we've engaged. But we're really committed to making sure we do the right thing here, which is successful and we can all feel good about. And we welcome your feedback on what you'd like to see here. And I think that was, and these are just some pictures that, where, that we're kind of taking inspiration from to see if we can bring some of this to Hilltop Mall. So this is what we want the community and open spaces to feel like, right? Somewhere maybe a Main Street kind of experience where you could walk and you'd be surrounded by shops, and maybe a place, an outdoor patio outside a coffee shop, and an open space where you could have a yoga class on the weekend, or maybe kids could have an art class. And next slide, please. And then some entertainment and retail, which is what we've heard a lot from the community, that they really want to see more of that in their neighborhood. And next slide, please. And then I mentioned that there will be a commercial component to Hilltop, right, along with the housing and the placemaking and the retail. And these are the mix of uses that we envision will be part of that commercial opportunity. So we think it has the potential to be a campus for a wide variety of companies. And it could either be a mix of these uses, or it could be 2 or 3 of these uses that we've noted here. There's advanced manufacturing, distribution, data centers, research and development, or even biomanufacturing and film studios. And these are all users that we've actually received inquiries from for Hilltop. So we're really excited about the possibilities for Hilltop. And looking forward to working with all the stakeholders that care about Hilltop to make this happen. And then this last slide is just highlighting, what I mentioned earlier, that sustainability is just really important to Prologis. And I know, Banki, you could touch on some of this too. So I talked about our solar leadership, right? We're committed to making sure we have solar installation at Hilltop when we do the new development, so there's some on-site power generation. We want to make sure we hit our net zero goal by 2040, so there's going to be a serious reduction in carbon emissions. And then the other thing that I also wanted to mention is that we have a community workforce training program, and we're looking for opportunities and local partners to implement that as part of our Hilltop project. And working in partnership with nonprofits and local businesses is a big part of what we want to do here. I mentioned farmers market. If there's an urban farming company or a farmers market nonprofit or small businesses that support the arts, we'd really love to meet them and get to know them and see how we can find a place for them in the project. And then, I'll just end with saying there's water and carbon, just making sure that we save on water. And we're also committing to this whole site being an all-electric development. And we're trying to we're targeting a LEED Gold certification for the whole site. So those are just some of the sustainability features that we're working on. Next slide, please. And then these are the challenges that we're facing right now, right? As we design and try to put in all these different ideas into this site. And we have so many other projects underway in the city, so we have an idea of what it costs to demolish a mall and grade a site and build a new building. So it's extremely expensive right now to do anything, right? And that's why you see a lot of projects, they get entitled and then you don't see any change there. It's because they can't make the numbers work. So construction cost is a big, big part of that. And then because the site is so large and we would be completely changing the use of it, it's going to need new utilities, new power, new drainage. That's also a big investment that goes in. And then the design unknowns, right? When you dig up a big piece of land, you don't know what you're going to find in there and what the issues are going to show up to be. So there's a lot of that you don't know about. And then power needs, and Lena talked about this too. So being able to bring a good amount of power to this site is also going to be a key to bringing the right commercial users that will bring innovation and bring jobs and hopefully, enhance Richmond's presence on the innovation map of the Bay Area. And we just wanted to end with this slide. This is our understanding of how the process works, and this is from our perspective. Lena had, the schedule slide that she had presented, and we are very much working in collaboration with Lena within the specific plan process. So what you see there is development and concept of a master plan. So, we're working and collaborating with the city and trying to create that. But once we create one concept, we want to be able to share it with community members, get their feedback, and then it's an iterative process. We go back again and we make changes based on the feedback. And then the other input that goes into it is pricing and feasibility. It has to be something that we feel we can actually execute. So that's kind of a cyclical process. You make changes, you get feedback, and then hopefully you land on a plan that stakeholders are aligned on. And then that's something, you know, that Lena's specific plan process can help move forward to the environmental review process, which then goes to the city council. So we're kind of in that cycle right now and hoping to move along that path towards the right. Next slide, please. So that was our presentation. We're happy to take any questions or hear your comments.
Yeah, there was a rumor that Costco would like to put in a second store up at the Hilltop Mall site. And a lot of people are excited about that. Is that a possibility without putting you on the spot?
So as I said before, we received a lot of inquiries for Hilltop, and Costco is one of them. And we'd love to know, I mean, if that's something that the community is, you know, has a positive reaction to, we'd love to know that.
Yes, and thank you for showing the numbers. The graph there, I know that Prologis, your business meat and potatoes is in warehousing. And I noticed that the data there showed a very small population wants warehousing. They want everything else except for warehousing. Are you open to, because that was less than 10%, are you open to not putting warehousing and focusing on the other pieces? Or is warehousing going to have to be
That's a great question. And we've
Sorry
talked
to put you on
about
the spot, but you had to ask.
No, that's a good question, and we talk about that every time we have a discussion on this project. And we showed you a mix of uses. And warehouse was part of that, distribution, manufacturing. So I hope that answered your question. So we're open to having a mix of those uses. Yeah. There was a question over there.
No, I didn't
She
notice.
couldn't hear.
His question, somebody told me what he said.
His question was, our meat and potatoes business is warehousing, and are we open to having other uses, or not having warehouse use? That was his question. Yes, sir.
What type of brand name restaurants are you envisioning for here? I mean, we want to make sure that we draw people here. So what are you planning?
That's a great question, and we're not at the point where we're talking about specific restaurant brands, right? Right now we're just thinking of how much retail, where does it go, and then once we've established that, then we'll have a retail broker working for us, and we'll get feedback from the community on these are the kinds of food businesses that we like to have here, and then we can start, you know, getting more detailed about which restaurants would actually be here. We'd love to hear from you if there are specific restaurants that you'd like to see in Richmond. Pete's coffee shop? Yes, sir.
Would your retail broker be the person who would be looking if there was going to be a grocery store put into the mall? Because that's something that's lacking in this area, and I know that there's a big drive for community for that.
Yes, that's, that was part of the feedback that Banke put up. So we definitely want to plan a grocery store as part of the development. And yeah, we'll be working with our broker and using our own relationships to see how we can attract a grocery store to Hilltop. There's one question there. Yes.
With the grocery store, not a specialized grocery store, we want I would say a regular grocery store.
The question was that we'd like a regular, not a specialized. And what would you say is a specialized?
The Asian market is specialized.
Yeah. Not a 99 brand or, those are specialized stores.
Got it.
You need something that, open to the
Yes.
whole community to be able to go in and shop.
Yes. I understand what you're saying. That's good feedback. Yeah.
So my question was going to be in regards to something that Lena mentioned earlier. We might need some more funding for the specific plan if we wanted to expand it to the other side of Bloom. And not that you can commit, but it would be great to have some matching funds from Prologis so that we could do all of Hilltop, because that project there will affect every corner of that.
You were talking about so the question was about expanding the boundaries of the specific plan, right?
And Lena was saying that there's not a lot of funding to be able
Is
to.
it just a funding thing? Is it also a time and focus issue? Like that feels like that's a really big discussion. But if you're asking us if we would support what makes sense for that area, I think we'd be open to having that discussion.
Yeah, especially on the other side of Bloom that
Yeah.
wasn't highlighted, it's going to affect those businesses and anyone that lives in that side. So we have to be able to look, because this will be the biggest, largest development in this area,
Yeah.
and it's going to affect every corner. And the way that that mall is built, it's a half a circle that you could use.
Yes.
You can't use the other half, so you know where that traffic's going to come from, and it's going to be those freeways.
Yes, it's the half that faces the freeway.
Yeah, so it's figuring out the impact to those communities
Yeah,
and the businesses that are there as well.
that's right.
So also, we have Walmart. Can you elaborate on what will be done with Walmart?
So the question was, what do we do with Walmart? Walmart has a long-term lease that is in place for the next 40 years. So I would assume that they stay where they are. Yes, whatever changes. I think that's what we'll end up doing.
40 years, huh?
Jacob?
Yes.
You know, there's two schools.
Yes. Yeah, and we've heard a lot about how it's not safe for students to cross the streets. So we want to think about, and then Lena had mentioned that there are sidewalks missing. So we really want to think about adding sidewalks and crosswalks and really being very deliberate on where the students cross so that it can be safe for them. And also looking for strategies on how to reduce the speed of traffic there.
That's why I said it's stoplight.
Yeah. Yes.
Similar to that, there's a Planned Parenthood that's currently there. Is there going to be working around that to ensure that there's health services, or is their lease going to be up and it's part of the...
Are you saying that Planned Parenthood is in the Hilltop? That's not.
It's not in the mall itself, it's in that larger part that's part of the plan.
Yes.
Is that going to be affected by that?
So we don't control anything outside the Hilltop Mall site. I'm not able to answer that question. That's
Oh, I
a
just
really
wanted
interesting.
to, sorry, my bad, I got that.
There's a question over there.
Yeah, you know, the streets are wide, a lot of traffic. You need to think about pedestrian bridges in a couple of key spots, not just sidewalks, but actual bridges over the damn streets. Because you can have all the sidewalks and all the crosswalks you want, but the bottom line is people gotta go a long way to get across the crosswalk. So there should be some key spots where there's pedestrian bridges.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Thank you. We'll keep that in mind.
I was thinking about that we come here and we might want to walk all the way to the mall. It's not safe to walk because you got all these cars going. Like you said, it sounds good if you have an undertown or a walking space where people can walk, get in there.
Yeah, and that's a good comment even for Lena, for the specific plan.
I'm taking
right?
notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to someplace, I don't know if that's involved, but like go shopping and just one Macy's, not the store, but I mean, department stores that buy stuff and gifts and shoes and whatever. Are you, can you have more than one of those? What is the plan on that?
Yeah, that's similar to Lena's answer, the other question from the gentleman. So we're at the point where we're deciding how much retail and where it goes, and then once we establish that, we'll start thinking about who are the retailers that we can bring here.
Are they going to be like individual smaller shops, or you have a large? You don't even know if it's going to be one.
It's always good for retail to be a mix because the really large ones drive a lot of traffic and bring that traffic to the smaller ones. So it will be a mix, and we'll try to support local Richmond businesses as much as we can through that process too.
I don't want to put concerts to buy their shoes.
Exactly, and we've heard that before, so we'll keep that in mind.
Sarita, I have another question here.
Yes,
The
sir.
question is, so at this point, you guys don't have an effect on any changes that can be done right now. So for example, on the corner of Mechanics, where the Mechanics Bank is, which is Bloom and Close, I think, Bloom and Close, that intersection right on that corner, they do donuts, and they do donuts and sideshows. I don't really care anymore because the city doesn't seem like that's an issue. So, I mean, I do care about the school though. I do care about that. And that's the reason why I'm asking you, do you guys have any effect in where you could put cameras, a stoplight, or anything right now that can make it safer for the community? See, I know the politicians that are in there now, that ain't a priority for them. I ran for office, so they already told me that ain't a priority. So and not to you people over here, but I'm pointing at certain politicians that I think they don't care. So my question is there anything Prologis can do that's going to affect the quality of life in the short run before this project gets started that could make even a dent or even push the city to make things safer for some of these things? Because you guys got the data. So the data has pretty much told you that people are concerned about traffic.
Yes.
And have you been to that intersection? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, I know what you're talking about, and we've heard this complaint before. And some of the things that we've actually installed, we've hired 24-hour security people to try to see if they can prevent, the sideshows that happen. They usually happen early in the morning. And that's what we've heard from the neighbors. And we're trying to coordinate and work with the RPD because, we're a private company, so we can't show up and stop people from doing things. But we're trying to be as coordinated as we can with the police to make sure that that doesn't happen. So what we can do is make sure we have eyes on the road and we can report it in time. So we made sure we increase our security presence as well.
Well, the only reason why I asked you this question is because you could do cameras, which would...
We've got cameras and we've got a security patrol.
So you do have cameras that are monitoring that intersection?
I'm not sure if it's facing that intersection, but I'll definitely look into that. Yeah.
Being involved in the Richmond government for many, many years, the problem that we have at Hilltop is they state that we don't have enough rooftops to warrant a high-dollar grocery store, which people deserve. So my question to you is, how are you going to change the rooftops to give us a quality grocery store versus saying later on that, well, we don't have the rooftops for it, and so therefore we're going to give you what we can afford to have. How are you going to work that out? So a quality store, and do you have the rooftops to make that type of video that you just put up a reality for Hilltop? Because they deserve it.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's what I was talking about, the balance of the 4 shared goals, that everything we do needs to be financially feasible so we can actually get it built. So I think the challenge that you mentioned is correct, right, the rooftop challenge, but we're looking at this in phases, right, and that's why we designed a mixed-use neighborhood so that during the day the people who work there show up and they provide that buying power, and then in the evenings it's the housing and the people who live there that we're adding those rooftops. That also brings more of the buying power, and we're hoping that with that combined and the fact that it's a new development that has attractive amenities, will make it something that a quality grocery store is interested in. Because all these stores and businesses, they want to be part of something that's high quality, right? And that's our hope, that we create something that brings all those elements together well.
What do we mean by rooftops?
I think you just meant homes and people and buying power by rooftops.
Maybe for a restaurant or a little shop or something, what is your timeline when you start looking into a few little things? The timeline when, say, I could go in and buy a cup of coffee and sit in a restaurant. I mean, what kind of timeline is that? Like 19, 20, 30 or?
That's a wonderful question. So you asked when you can sit there and have a cup of coffee, right, at one of those coffee shops. And that would be, you're talking about when do we complete construction?
No, when is a little section maybe or something?
Yeah, so I think we first need to get to adoption that Lena showed at the end of 2023. From there, we would need building permits, which, depending on how quickly the planning department can process those, let's say it's 4 to 6 months. So that takes us to mid-24, and then let's assume at least 12 to 18 months of construction. So that sometime in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Construction itself is 18 months. It's everything else we do before that that takes the longest time, right? Having all these meetings and planning. And they will be.
We got to wrap this up.
Yes.
You need a place for the handicap too, you know, you got people going, you know,
Mhm.
you need that too, and senior citizen.
That's right.
Because a lot of people around here can't drive anymore, so.
Well, we got time for one more question if anybody wants to ask one more question. Oh, Rich?
Yeah, sorry, I just have one question. When you guys start construction, there's a lot of people that use your parking lot by Walmart, Walgreens. Is that gonna be shut down? There's a lot of people from Summit, all come over there to park to pick up their kids.
Once the whole site is under construction, then there will be a hoarding around it because it wouldn't be safe for anyone to be within the construction site. So yes, for some period of time while it's under construction, it will be closed down. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Prologis. Thank you, Banke. Thank you, Smita. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming in, and again, you know, find out who your candidates are, what they stand for, because a lot of this is going to go in front of the city council. It's going to have to go up for a vote. So, also, I want to make an announcement. Our police chief, Lisa French, is back. Yes, that's right. That's right. So, apparently, Hilltop Community Church is not going to do a National Night Out, excuse me. So unfortunately, Hilltop Green is the closest one. So if there is a list out there on the city website for if anybody wants to go out for National Night Out, follow the train. Got a question back here.
What about Halloween?
We haven't gotten that far yet. She asked about Halloween, so we're working on it.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
I also want to thank the neighborhood councils that came out here. I see Parchester is out here represented, North and East, and so, and Richmond Heights, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. And then all the candidates. So if you have any questions for the candidates that are here, feel free to ask them outside. We're supposed to be apolitical. We can't get involved with that, but we do have candidates here. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks again.